Chapter 5. The Calm After the Storm. Using the flat side of my rake, I continued to flatten out, smooth, and compact the healthy soils I purchased to fill my newest raised garden box. This addition to my growing collection of raised beds was curiously placed, however, noticeably away from all the rest of the boxes, which were collected on the east side of the house, run in a neat little row with irrigation brought up just underneath each one. Each of those boxes had been purposefully placed equal distance from the previous box as it was from its neighbor. All 5 of those boxes had already been planted and currently had budding sprigs of cabbage, lettuce, broccoli, carrots, peas, and turnips. This box, though, this box was different. Curiously placed indeed. I had put this box in the southwest corner of the property, carefully positioned directly over the hole where my secrets were buried. It had been 3 weeks since that terrifying night chasing after the cursed koala to land on my knees at the edge of this hole which had been half dug up. The most memorable part of that particular evening, the section of my life in which I will never forget because it had continued to haunt my scarce sleeping hours, being, of course, Peter Bengali making yet another appearance from beyond the grave. I remembered that exact moment in every single one of its heart-wrenching seconds. The blood in my veins had turned to ice and felt like the intricate shards would shred the inside of my atria like vindictive little assassins, each one as unique as a fingerprint. The fact that I had weathered the encounter with not only my life, but the sad remains of my sanity, though the degree to which that remained could really be argued, was a fact that I grimly added to the growing list of lucky occurrences that had seemingly plagued my life since I had taken another's. The day after I nearly had a stroke over the apparition of my victim, I endeavored to ensure that hole would haunt me no further. I began, and had since completed, filling the excavated remains of the hole, complete with varmint wire in case anything had the desire to burrow up from the depths, and had built and filled the raised planter box in which I was now toiling. One thing had come to me as a relief in the weeks since that horrible night. My new garden bed would certainly keep any inquiring diggers from poking around. An additional positive, though whether or not it was a direct side effect I did not know, Peter had not reappeared to me. Though that positive did nothing to soothe my now rampant paranoia, nor did it do anything to help me sleep, a feat I was still struggling deeply with. Each night I fought with the Sandman for relief from my exhausted brain, only to be ravaged by the visions and specters frequenting my unconscious mind. The few precious hours I did manage to sleep were spent restlessly tossing and turning as my dream self desperately fled from Peter and the never-ending deluge of police and prosecutors who wanted nothing more than to devour my soul. Exercise, I had found, helped a bit. The more I exhausted my body, the more my bedraggled mind was likely to sleep solidly through the few hours I achieved without needing to fight off the fervors of my conscience, which was determined to drive me from the realm of the sane as if it were a knight of honor driving an abhorrent evil from the land. I clung to reality with the unsteady grip of an alcoholic with 2 weeks sober. I hardly remembered what had elapsed since the discovery of the corpse in the marsh, my own life flashing before me like a poorly filmed cinematic display, with a nondescript cast and an even further unmemorable plot. I think I had worked all of the shifts I had been scheduled, though that infernal bell still chased after me like a demented mosquito buzzing in your ear. I tried not to think of that fucking bell. I found that tending to my garden helped, both my old set and the new one I had constructed to firmly bury the past. I had always found chores like cleaning the house and yard work to fill me with a certain sense of peace, like a zen moment while I completed the route task that came with maintaining my home and property. That zen had, of course, failed to return since my life had become about fear and apprehension, but it still provided a slight relief, like my exercise had, to my potent insomnia. These thoughts and many more had circled and cycled through my brain like buses running through their routes, hitting the same stations every day at the same time. Clockwork. My obsession had become clockwork. As I turned and packed the arable earth, I still twitched and jumped at every sound and sudden breeze, still constantly searching my surroundings for that many-coated ghost to emerge from the shadows to finish what it had started. Ring, ring! You're right. It is just another exercise in futility, but I can't help it. I refuse to be caught off guard for the end. Even as I finish this box, the purpose for which cannot be escaped in my brain, I envision that night, Peter towering over me. No, I will not be caught off guard. Of course, the companion portion to my oscillating thoughts had begun to address that which I had immediately wished to bury deep within my brain to never be seen again. I enjoyed killing Peter. Peter Bengali, the linchpin in the noose around my sanity. Remembering the blade plunging into his chest with that sickening sound produced a feeling akin to the warmth gained from sitting in front of a fire on a cold night. A pleasure that I did not want to acknowledge. A feeling that I surely knew I would crave to feel again. So I tried with all of my might to bury and slay that feeling. Stab it through its heart so it could never breathe to reproduce within the damp confines of my mind. But I could not escape it, could not bury it, could not kill it. I loved killing Peter. The task I had begun with the box was long since completed. My exhausted brain simply caught in a loop as the terror gained from that realization ran through me. I really did enjoy killing him. That is why I did not stop once I had taken the knife from him. I know that I could have. The ability to simply stop was right there, and I turned down the opposing path. I finished what Peter had set into motion the moment he drew that fucking blade. I was, in many ways, vindicated in my actions, considering the alternative outcomes were rather bleak for myself. I knew that if I had not taken the knife from him, he definitely would have used it on me. This path of reasoning should have brought me some sort of comfort, some sort of relief from the torment of my actions. Yet that sickening pleasure is all that remains, as deeply unsettling as it was fulfilling. What if that pleasure was fate's twisted method of ensuring I followed its will? Surely many of nature's more necessary measures, such as eating, drinking, and reproducing, all released chemicals in the brain known to incite pleasure or satisfaction on some shape or form for just about all life as we know it. Surely it was not a far leap to assume that fate wanted me to kill Peter Bengali. The explosion of pure joy in my cerebellum was merely the reward to the expected task, the proverbial carrot over the stick. How on earth was I to react to this feeling of incredible enjoyment over an event that I considered a crime in our society? How was it possible for me to feel any sort of pleasure over killing another human when just the thought itself is nauseating? My brain was clearly falling apart as my psyche attempted to come to terms with the terrible acts I had committed. But where on that scale did all of the apparitions fall? Surely Peter's repeated appearances and attempts to touch or talk to me had to be in some way symbolic of my mind processing the murdered man. Despite the varied interactions with the deceased, it seemed in my mind each time that if he had managed to lay but a single dead finger on me, dire consequences would have ensued. And if all of the apparitions I had been seeing and experiencing thus far were indeed merely hallucinations wrought by my grieving, exhausted brain, why was that feeling of danger so very real in every instance? More than that, where was the pleasure from the kill to coexist with this devastating mix of feelings and emotions wrought from the aftermath? And then there was the fucking bell, just ringing its way to the foremost of my problems list. Peter appearing to me made sense, if only in some twisted way. The bell did not. Nor did that damned koala. I had nearly forgotten about that damned koala until now. My stirring and tamping got further and more aggressive and agitated, still dwelling on the same completed task. The bell and the koala. Where did they fit in this equation of my madness? The alarm on my cell phone sounded from my back pocket, vibrating and sounding off with one of my favorite rock songs. The generic ringtones available for the alarms had been firmly placed off limits. Even still, the alarm took a second to worm its way into my deeply troubled brain, and had made its way through half of the song by the time it registered on my mind that the alarm was indeed sounding. Stopping my superfluous actions and putting down the steel-forked rake, I took out my phone and silenced the alarm. It was time to get ready for my afternoon shift at the hellhole. Exciting. The bell was ever so vocal when I was at work. It made the shifts that much more difficult to endure. My deteriorating psyche did nothing but to degrade my usually high-grade customer service, and I had several moments in the last few weeks in which I caught myself ready to lose my temper over some stupid or petty little thing. It was like working with a ticking time bomb in your chest, just waiting for the fuse to light up again, furiously swatting to douse the flame. But life goes on. Midnight. The crucible in which night and early morning clash for dominance of the darkness. I stood in the empty parking lot in front of Pitt's and smoked a cigarette. The shift had been long so far. The monotony always seemed to make the more dull shifts drag into eternity. Yet midnight had arrived, a time in the closing shift I have firmly reserved for stepping out for a smoke. If the flow of customers allow, of course. Vices come first at the market of bad decisions. This night, however, was slow enough for my little ritual to unfold. As I smoked, my mind returned to the circuit of thoughts I had been so ever consumed with as of late. It truly was troubling to me if fate was pushing me towards becoming a killer. Extinguishing human life was never a profession I wished to be well versed in. That tantalizing feeling of sheer pleasure, though, was very hard to ignore. What seemed to terrify me the most, however, was the ease at which my mind wanted to fall back on this new course of action, as if murder was now viable as wiping my ass. Any time my temper had managed some sort of hold on my brain, which has been far easier to recently, My mind seemed to construct a course of action that ended firmly with violence of the highest order. This was far more terrifying to me than even the specter of Peter haunting me. This sickly sweet desire had shown me that there was no discrimination in who could be caught in the crosshairs. If I truly wanted to murder again, then the urge to do so had no qualms with who was on the receiving end. None whatsoever. I was blessed. I was blessedly relieved from these dark thoughts by the jangling and ever protesting approach of Chopper on his bicycle. I skimmed the clinging darkness to spot the man, wobbling and weaving along, the wagon he pulled keeping him right-sided as much as it kept his meager possessions in tow. I waved at Chopper as he got closer, taking a moment to reignite the cold tip of my smoke. The man neatly parked his bike train against the wall of the building, as always, and carefully ambled off. He lovingly applied the kickstand, though the wagon held the bike up, and the stand didn't even scrape the cement. "Evening, Chopper," I said to the man as I watched him carefully correct the lean on his bike before turning to me. "How are you doing tonight?" "Hey, kid," Chopper said quietly. "Just another spot in the swimming hole." He paused and looked around the empty lot before regarding me once more. "Got any more of them smokes? You know I could use one right about now." "You know I do." I handed the man a couple cigarettes, which ceremoniously disappeared into his many folds and layers of clothing. He did take one of the smokes and perched it precariously in his lips, taking a moment to dig out a lighter, while the cigarette bobbed and weaved in an elegant dance as Chopper's mouth worked in concentration. Finally freeing the lighter, he sparked up and stowed the fire away quickly. Sharp eyes darted all over the parking lot once more before finally settling on my face. A whisper of concern swam across Chopper's eyes briefly. "What's the matter with you?" he asked as he puffed on the cigarette. "Looks like you done seen yourself a ghost. Or maybe them damn boys in black finally done dug that mind drill into your brain, huh? You smelling the color yellow, boy?" I chuckled at this. The concern from the aging vagrant was as heartening as it was confusing. Typical for Chopper. "Yeah, I'm okay, Chopper," I replied to the concerned look. "Just been fighting some pretty strong insomnia lately." "You know what'll fix that right up, don't you?" he said, not missing a beat. "Let me guess," I mused. "Chasing snails in the moonlight while humming coffee jingles?" "Nah, you damn fool," Chopper said with a smile. "Smoke some weed. That shit'll put your ass right to sleep. Always works for me when I'm disputing the Sandman." I chuckled lightly at this. "You get insomnia often, Chopper?" "Often?" He looked at me amused. "Bah! Try damn near every night. 'Tis damn near hard to sleep when it's fucking freezing outside." "Huh," I remarked, surprised. I would have figured alcohol would do the trick better than pot. "Nah, don't you know anything, kid?" he said with a smile. "Too much liquor on a cold night like that, and you're gonna not wake up in the morning. Far safer just to hit the reefer. Doesn't leave no head-splitting headache either." That made sense to me. Sometimes I forgot that Chopper was homeless and slept outside. My camaraderie with the man often allowed me to forget his circumstances. I wouldn't necessarily say that they were dire, but he certainly wasn't living large, as they say. "You in trouble or something, Sonny?" Chopper was regarding me with curiosity. "You been looking awful haunted lately. Not that it's none of my business, of course, but I dare say I'm rather fond of you." For a brief, fleeting moment, I seriously considered telling Chopper everything. Every little thing that had occurred since my fateful run-in with Peter. I knew it was safe enough to confide in Chopper. It's not like anyone would believe the man if he ran off and started telling everyone he could. That tends to be the case when you foster an identity as a kind enough fellow with a couple of screws loose in the old toolbox up top. I hesitated, not because I was concerned of scaring off the man. I'm sure that I could tell Chopper that I played Texas Hold'em with Satan last night and fucked Mary Magdalene, and he would hardly bat an eyelash. The thoughts of the sheer torment I had been experiencing as I wrestled with the guilt of my crime is what truly stopped me. This burden was mine to bear. Yeah, I'm all right, Chop, I said to the man, putting on a big smile for him. It's just coming up on the year anniversary of my old man passing away. Guess I'm just having some issues coping. Oh, come on now, son, Chopper said, plopping a heavily calloused yet surprisingly clean hand on my shoulder. We all has our time to go. No use fretting on about something that's far beyond our control. Shed them tears and move on, kid. I'm sure that old man of yours wouldn't want to see you wallowing in self-pity now, would he? This kind and shockingly sober response truly caught me off guard. Partly because I had expected something outrageous along the lines of his usual responses, but mostly because I had, of course, been lying when I told him the cause of my stress. It was indeed 3 days until the anniversary of my father passing away, but with everything that I was currently drowning in, I hadn't even really thought of it until now. Of course, my father's death was something that hurt deeply still. He was the family member I was closest to, considering I had no siblings and no cousins that lived anywhere near me. However, the gripping nightmares and near dreamlike days filled with dread of the unknown and the known had occupied every last grain of my mind's capacity. Yet what Chopper said seemed to drive home so hard it hit that spot that had been aching deep in my heart, the pit of despair that had long since become numb and pushed back to be ignored. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. You are absolutely right, Chopper, I said, genuinely smiling this time. Thank you for saying that, my friend. Chopper returned my smile with a bright and warm one of his own. Of course, kid. You know I'm mighty fond of you. And of course, if there's anything else dragging on you, like some other person or some odd, you let me know. He paused, looking around quickly, suspiciously, inspecting the empty parking lot around us. I think I finally figured out how to manipulate them boys in black. Figure I've dug out enough of them to be able to sick on some unsuspecting. You keep that on mind, all right, Sonny? You remember what old Chopper told you? I had to laugh at this transition from the strangely sane Chopper back to the Chopper I had come to know and love. You got it, Chopper. Coming in for a sandwich? You know I am, damn it, he said, scanning the parking lot once more, though no one had come through. Hope them boys didn't snatch up the damn pastrami. As Chopper and I made our way to the front door, a familiar little VW Bug pulled into the lot, bright green with pink interior. Though I usually watch this car roll in on the cameras, to whom the vehicle belonged, I had no doubt. Chopper had already made his way inside the store, though I was dragging my feet, hoping to catch the radiating smile of Serenity Williams as she exited her little car, seemingly tired and bedraggled, and flawless in every way. She did indeed grace me with her brilliant grin as she got out and walked around to the passenger side for Nathan, whom I could see dozing peacefully in his car seat. Working hard or hardly working? Serenity called to me, her friendly smile turning to a sly grin. I crushed out the smoldering butt in my hand, as if to emphasize her point. I prefer a healthy mixture of the two. It's difficult to appreciate the work when it's hard, and it's hard to work when it's not appreciated. Oh, look at you getting all philosophical, she said as she stooped down to scoop Nathan from his safety carriage, still firmly in dreamland. Sounds like you're a burgeoning Adam Smith. I chuckled at this. The day I become the father of capitalism, do us all a favor and shoot my ass. No interest in being one of the most famous economists of all time, huh? She replied, making her way towards the door now that she had Nathan in hand. I would imagine that economists live the most boring of lives. I gestured to the storefront as I held the door for her, Not that mine is much more glamorous, of course. You certainly could have fooled me. Her banter always had a way of keeping me on my toes. Well, I said, recovering hastily. This is just my day job. Quite an interesting day job that takes place at night, I must say. I was never one for following social norms. Oh, of that I am definitely certain. We had made our way inside the store, and I walked behind the counter as our dialogue continued. Speaking of social norms, how was the shift this evening? Not too grueling, I hope? I'm assuming that by changing the subject, you are acknowledging my victory in our little impasse. I paused briefly to consider this. Yeah, I suppose you have outwitted me once again, madame. Mm-hmm. One of these days you ought to give me a fair contest and not just cede to my clearly superior intellect. I laughed heartily. Well, with it being clearly superior, there is only so much I can do before defeat is imminent. Though I do enjoy providing you with some light, if only brief, entertainment. I suppose that will have to do then, she replied with a grin. And the shift wasn't too bad, just the usual hypochondriacs and the odd work-related injury. Sounds like a party, I replied deftly. It's always a party until the nurse gets blood or vomit all over her scrubs. Ew, yeah, that definitely sounds like your typical party around these parts. And you know this from self-experience? Ouch. Point taken. I may not have attended the event myself per se, but I have witnessed enough to have an opinion. Truly the American way. I could not help but to laugh at this before replying. All right, I give. What can I do for you tonight, Miss Williams? Oh, Sean, I thought we were over such formalities. She shook her head in mock disappointment. Besides, you know my usual order. I took a moment to retrieve the pint bottle of whiskey and the pack of cigarettes for Serenity. There we are. And how is young Master Nathan doing tonight? A handful as always, she replied, handing me the cash for her purchases. Keeps asking me when you'll be babysitting him over these smelly old ladies. Now, there was a thought that had fled my brain shortly after she had mentioned it the last time, several weeks prior. I was no longer in what I had assumed to be immediate threat of arrest, or at least questioning, and if I was no longer going to get hauled off to the station at any moment or traumatize the kid by getting handcuffed in front of him, then was there any reason to deny the reasonable request of the beautiful woman before me? I suppose not. After all, I am rather fond of the boy. Oh, I slapped my hand on my forehead. You know, I completely forgot about you asking me that last time. I am terribly sorry. Oh, come on now, Sean, Serenity replied, waving her hand as if to bat away my apology. It's not like you're some nanny I have a verbal or written contract with. It's okay if you don't want to do it. I understand, not like everyone likes kids, especially high-energy boys like mine. I know that, I said incredulously. Give me some credit at least. Sheesh. But I do enjoy Nathan's company, and it is rather heartening to hear that he so resoundingly enjoys mine in return. And that is an understatement there, Sean, she said, shaking her head. He loves you. I think he regards you as his best friend, not just his favorite sitter. My heart swelled with a warm, melting love for the boy as I looked at his small, slumbering face, and another genuine smile took up shop on my face. That is truly wonderful to hear. Well, let me think. I handed Serenity her change and bagged up her bottle unnecessarily as I considered my schedule for the next week. I believe I would be free for the usual slot tomorrow and Friday, if you do need someone to watch him. Maybe I can be of service. I would love that, she replied quickly, perking up at my offer. And I know he would too. Oh, the pleasure would truly be all mine, Serenity. I offered her my biggest smile. She returned mine with a dazzling display of her own. I took that brief moment to commit that smile to memory, drinking in every inch of her radiant personality, basking in the warmth emanating from this beautiful soul. I didn't deserve to revel in such beauty. So I will see you tomorrow around noon. I'll shoot you a call before I head over to your place, she said as she backed towards the entrance, purchases and Nathan tucked safely in her embrace. Definitely, I agreed, big goofy smile still perched on my mouth. And I will see you tomorrow. Okay then, she said, turning and pushing the door open, the bell ringing softly overhead. Goodbye, Sean. Bye, Serenity. I watched after her as the door closed and she returned to her vehicle. Man, was I in trouble with that one. Hopelessly encompassed in the young boy's affection and failing to fight off the enclosing tendrils of love for Serenity. Feeling at the dark, endless pit of despair and self-hatred that had devoured most of what lay behind my eyelids, I knew that I did not deserve to feel this wonderful sensation prying at my mind. I was a murderer, and Serenity Williams deserved so much better than that. Yet I was helpless to fend off my feelings for the woman. Well, ain't that a caterpillar caught in a tennis racket? Chopper spoke up from the other side of the counter and scared me half to death. I jumped in place and nearly knocked half of the merchandise off the counter as I spun towards him. My response to the friendly old man fetched uproarious laughter from his diaphragm, filling the quiet of the store with its warmth, reverberating off the walls and ceiling. After the brief, heart-stopping moment of sheer fear and panic, it was funny, of course. I joined the old man in his merriment. Considering I had completely forgotten he was there, my scare was well warranted. Damn, Chopper, I said, wiping tears from my eyes. I forgot you were even in here. Oh, is that why you done shit your britches when I said something, Sonny? With this reply, he nearly doubled over with laughter. I don't know about crapping my pants, I replied, but you sure scared the metaphorical shit out of me. The man regained his composure, if you could ever really call it composure with Chopper, faster than I did, and straightened up, adjusting the hems of the many coats he wore as he did. Well, I certainly couldn't blame you for falling for that one now, Sonny. She is a gem in a slipstream. A gem in a slipstream, huh? I shook my head and chuckled. Whatever that means. It means what the hell I said, damn it! The old man stamped his foot. It's praise, damn it, Sonny. Now, Chopper stopped talking and carefully looked around, scanning the empty store for any other occupants before continuing. How about you help old Chop out with some of them crinkly crackly tato chips? I have a feeling they'll go mighty fine with this here pastrami. I chuckled at the old man's antics. Go right on ahead, Chopper. I got you. Just let me know what you pick so I can take care of it. Delighted, Chopper turned and ambled down the aisle containing the snacks and potato chips. I took a moment to look around the store myself, making sure I hadn't missed anyone enter in the apparent stupor cast over me by Serenity's presence. Checking the monitor behind the counter with the camera feeds displayed to be sure, no one but Chop in the aisles, and the lot was empty once more, now that Serenity's VW had vacated. When I checked the camera feeds, I also happened to notice the time, 1:45 a.m. Time seemed to have escaped me once more this evening. Unease creeping in through the back of my skull. Surely I hadn't stood comatose in the parking lot for over an hour, had I? Chopper interrupted my anxious pondering by carefully placing a bag of chips on the countertop. How about these ones, Sonny? Think you can manage these? Those will do just fine, Chopper. Are those the ones you want? Yeah, my sandwich is telling me these will be best. Chopper always had a way of getting me to laugh. All right then, Chopper. Those ones it is. Okay then. Remember what I said about them boys in black, all right? How could I forget, Chopper? I said with a chuckle. Oh, you definitely don't want to forget, Chopper said, shaking his head vigorously. That's when they come for you the most, like they can sense it. See what I mean, Sonny? You let them boys walk out of the frame, The next thing you know, the butterfly is tapping your eyeball. Well, that sounds rather unpleasant. Unpleasant? Chopper said aghast. It's downright torturous is what it is. I will definitely have to keep my eyes peeled for them then. You better, Chopper replied, heading towards the door. You coming out for a smoke with me, Sonny? Sensing the old man wanted to be out of the store, I agreed. I made my way around the counter and joined the man as he exited the store, the bell chiming softly as we relinquished the space to the stillness of the late night and early morning churning the air around us. Out of habit, both of us scanned the parking lot carefully as we came out into the darkness. Fog had crept in to claim the night, and visibility was slowly dropping as it thickened. Already the edge of the parking lot was near entirely shrouded in mist. I retrieved cigarettes for the two of us from the pack nestled in my pocket and ignited the inhalants, passing one to Chopper. We stood in silence for several moments as we smoked and observed the morning and the fog steadily creeping in. You ever done something you can't forgive yourself for, Chopper? I have no idea what possessed me to ask the man the question that had been poking at the back of my mind since he first rode up on that noisy bike of his. I had no intention of asking the man, knowing that any line of questioning or conversation in that direction may lead to me exposing my dark secret, my burden. But before I could rent myself from the shock of blurting out what I had just been contemplating, and thus possibly saying something rather than saying something to intercept the man's response, he began to answer. Now, ain't that just $1 million question there, isn't it, Sonny? He smiled sadly. I don't think it's possible to walk this earth as a human questing for belonging without making terrible mistakes, kid. Just gotta learn from your fuck-ups. Wipe the blood from your lip and keep on questing. He paused, taking a deep drag on his smoke and exhaling slowly before continuing. We all fall down, son. We all do things we cannot forget. You don't have to forgive yourself, kid. He paused, meeting me eye to eye. You just have to get back up. Get back up and keep questing. I considered this sagely advice from the man I had grown to regard as a friend, crazy or not. Chopper made some real sense. I could never forgive myself for killing Peter Bengali, but I could move forward, learn from my terrible mistake, like Chopper said, keep on questing, wherever that quest may lead. Thanks, Chop, I said after several more moments of calm, early morning silence. You know I got your back, Sonny, Chopper said, regarding me once more. I'm rather fond of you, kid. Besides, you helped me get those damn boys in black off my back. Happy to help, Chop, I replied with a smile. All right, then, I'm off, he said. Gotta get back to camp before this damn fog tries to eat me. Like selling toads in a rabbit market. I laughed at this, and Chopper made his way to his bicycle, lovingly disengaged the unused kickstand, and clambered onto the seat. You remember what old Chop told you now, he called as he pedaled off onto the now wall of fog flanking the lot. I chuckled to myself once more, enjoying the mirth that always accompanied the old man. I took one last drag on my smoke, luxuriating in the intoxicating fumes, before depositing the spent vapor into the still morning air. Crushing out the butt, I turned to head back into the store. As my hand grabbed the cold metal handle on the door, a strange, dragging sound climbed through the fog and ambled across the parking lot. I stopped, frozen where I stood, and slowly turned my head towards the apparition, the familiar dread and unease seeping up my spine. My head swiveled, and my eyes hesitantly scanned the darkness, seeing nothing in the ever-deepening fog. Was it perhaps, please let it be, actually nothing? No terrifying hallucination to darken the small brightness that had just been shed on my world? I let out a ragged breath I did not know I was holding. Nothing. Silence returned. I quickly turned back to the door and wrenched it open and started inside. Again, the sound from behind me, this time closer. My feet glued themselves to the floor despite my panicked mind telling them to get moving. The fear clawing at the back of my eyeballs was threatening to transform into terrified panic as I managed to twist on my hip and look behind me again. There, on the other side of the parking lot, a shadow pressed on the fog. A figure, slowly moving towards the storefront. I forced myself to take a deep breath as I considered what was happening. This very well could be a drunken bar-goer coming over for a nightcap after being ejected, as it often happened around this time. I strained my eyes to make out details as the shadow came closer, the fog clinging tightly to the figure like a smoky suit of armor. Still, fear clawed at my brain, screaming at me to retreat, close the door, run! Yet my feet refused to come unglued as I stared at the dragging sound coming ever closer to me. Halfway across the parking lot, the fog finally, mercifully, began to peel away, the light from inside weakly prodding at details still covered in darkness. And then everything became clear. There he was, my nightmare incarnate, Peter Bengali, torn and shredded pants and coats revealing rotted and eroded skin beneath, bone peeking out from his left shin as he dragged his foot behind him. One eye had disappeared, revealing a dark cavity in its absence. The other was cloudy and pale, but locked onto me as the walking corpse limped ever closer. Peter slowly opened his decaying mouth, slimy strands of fungus and moss parting over his broken teeth and gums. He was only 15 feet from me now. The fear that had been throwing itself at the wall behind my eyes finally broke through, and the terrified panic took hold right as a horrendous, guttural, cracking scream emanated from Peter's open mouth. That horrible scream helped to snap my legs from their state of paralysis, and I nearly tripped over my feet as I scrambled to get inside the store. I swung the door closed and clawed at my pocket for the keys within. Peter limped closer. My fingers hurriedly dug into my jeans and closed over the ring, yanking to free them. As soon as the keys were loose from my pocket, they slipped my grasp and fell to the floor. Horrified, I dropped to my knees, one hand still holding the door closed, knowing that Peter would soon be on top of me, and who knew if the door would even stop those dead fingers from closing over my throat. Finding the keys once more, I quickly located the right one and slammed it into the lock, throwing the bolt home and securing the door. I threw myself away from the door and hid my face in my arm like I was bracing for an explosion. Ring, ring! The doorbell chimed as my body sailed through its field of vision. And then, silence. Seconds dragged into eternity as my panicked mind rapidly flicked from scenario to scenario, imagining all of the many gruesome outcomes at the hands of my undead pursuer. My ragged breath tore at my raw throat as I fought to stabilize the flow of air ravaging my lungs. Any moment now, those rotted, decaying fingers will close over my ankle or the back of my throat, and that will be it. Game over for Sean. At least a small enclave of calm remaining in my brain piped up. I could finally get some sleep. I opened my eyes and looked around me. The store was empty, silent. Turning slowly towards the door, my fear peaked, knowing Peter would be standing there, waiting to be seen before devouring me. But there was no one. Through the glass door, I could see the empty parking lot beyond. Peter was gone. Ring, ring!